Hello, everyone. I hope you all are having a good day. My presentation for today will be about Robert Burns. We're going to be talking about his life as a poet, also an overview of his poetry and his legacy. Robert Burns, a famous Scottish poet and lyricist, also known as Rabbie Burns or Scotland's favorite son. Robert Burns is often credited as the national poet of Scotland and is the best known Scottish language poet till date. Robert Burns is considered one of the most famous characters of Scotland's cultural history. Born on January 25th, 1759, in Alloway, Scotland, Robert Burns was the eldest son of tenant farmers William Burns and Agnes Brown. After some rudimentary education, Robert's parents encouraged him to read books by important contemporary writers, as well as Shakespeare and Milton. Burns began his career as a local poet, writing for a local known audience to whom he looked for immediate response, as dual artists in a traditional context. He wrote on topics of appeal both to himself and to his artistic community, often in a wonderfully appealing conversational style. Robert Burns began life as a poor tenant farmer. He is best known as a pioneer of the Romantic movement for his lyrical poetry and his rewriting of Scottish folk songs, many of which are still well known across the world today. Since his death on July 21st, 1796, his work has inspired many Western thinkers. He is also known to inspire the founders of both liberalism and socialism. During 19th and 20th centuries, celebration of his life and works became a national charismatic cult, his influence being clearly visible in Scottish literature. Since he was a boy, Burns found farm work demanding and detrimental to his health. He broke up the drudgery by writing poetry and engaging with the opposite sex. When his father died in 1784, worn, and, worn out and bankrupt, it only served to deepen Burns' critical view of the religious and political establishments that perpetrated Scotland's rigid class system. His poetry recorded and celebrated aspects of farm life, regional experience, traditional culture, class culture and distinctions, and religious practice. Burns is often seen as the end of that literary line, both because his brilliance and achievement could not be equaled, and more particularly because the Scots vernacular in which he wrote some of his celebrated works was, even as he used it, becoming less and less intelligible to the majority of readers who were already well versed with English culture and language. Burns, however, has been viewed alternately as the beginning of another literary tradition. He is often called a pre-romantic poet for his sensitivity to nature, his high valuation of feeling and emotion, his spontaneity, his fierce stance for freedom and against authority, his individualism, and his antiquarian uh, interest in old songs and legends. The many backward glances of romantic poets to Burns, as well as their critical comments and pilgrimages to the locales of Burns' life and work, suggest the validity of connecting Burns with that pervasive European cultural movement of the late 18th and early 19th centuries, which shared with him a concern for creating a better world and for cultural renovation. Nonetheless, the very qualities which seem to link Burns to the Romantics were logical responses to the 18th century Scotland into which he was born, and his humble and agricultural background made him in some ways a spokesperson for every Scot, especially the poor and marginalized. He was aware of humanity's unequal condition and wrote of it and of his hope for a better world of equality throughout his life in epistles, poems, and songs, perhaps most eloquently in the recurring comparison of the rich and poor in the song for a, that, and a, that, which resoundingly affirms the humanity of the honest, hard-working poor man. Burns is an important and complex literary personage for several reasons. His place in the Scottish literary tradition, his pre-romantic inclinations, his position as a human being from the less privileged classes, imaging a better world. To this may be added his particular artistry, especially his ability to create encapsulating and synthesizing lines, phrases, and stanzas which continue to speak to and sum up the human condition. His recurring and poignant hymns to relationships are illustrative. The Kilmarnock edition shows Burns' penchant for self-presentation and his ability to choose variable poses to fit the expectations of the intended receiver. Burns presents himself as an untutored rhymer who wrote to counteract life's griefs. He feigns anxiety over the reception of his poems. He pays tribute to the genius of the Scots poets Ramsay and Ferguson, and he requests the reader's indulgence. In large measure, the material belies the tentativeness of the preface, revealing a poet aware of his literary tradition, capable of building on it, and deft in using a variety of voices, from colloquial through sentimental and tender to satiric and poignant. Burns was a man of great intellect and considered a pioneer of the Romantic movement. Many of the early founders of socialism and liberalism found inspiration in his works. Considered the national poet of Scotland, he is celebrated there and around the world every year on Burns Night, January 25th. Burns died in Dumfries, Scotland in 1796. Thank you for your attention, for watching. Have a great day.